this press conference by saying Harris and Walz have avoided the media, which is why they've become so accessible. J.D. Vance gaggled several times yesterday. In fact, on the tarmac at one point in Wisconsin, he talked to not only Kamala Harris's traveling press pool, but also the traveling pool with him. That includes myself. And he said he's open to talking to the press. He's open, and Donald Trump is open to going in front of less friendly media, sometimes a hostile environment, to defend their case. They're hoping that the media will press Kamala Harris and Governor Walz to do the same.
Yeah, you know, it's an understatement to say that was an interesting choice to appear at NABJ. It left a lot of people out there potentially kind of scratching their heads as to any kind of strategy for that interview, given that environment. But to that point, the former president has recently taken a bit of a backseat to his vice president, who has been on the campaign trail all week. So, Katrina, back to you. Are today's planned remarks an effort to draw some attention away from the Democratic ticket?
It absolutely appears that way. As you said, J.D. Vance set up this tour to trail Harris and Walz on their battleground state tour, which was already established that she was going to take that tour with her new running mate. Vance is now going to each of these stops, and now Trump has suddenly decided to have this surprise news conference. And as Torian was saying, they've really been emphasizing, or Vance at least, the fact that Harris is not taking questions from the media. And when we were at this event in Eau Claire at a factory yesterday, he was especially focused on taking questions from the local media outlets there. He really wanted to have this opportunity to talk to them, to put forward what he's saying is alternate messaging to what's happening on this Harris-Walz rally trail. And so this is Trump, I think, stepping out of the wings. He's been noticeably quiet this week. It's really been Vance out on the trail, and Trump, as far as we know, has just been home at Mar-a-Lago. He has this rally set up in Bozeman on Friday, and now this is the only other event on his calendar right now for him to talk to the public and take questions from the press.
Torian, what's J.D. Vance doing during this event today? We know that, you know, he's been out and about taking the spotlight as compared to the former president. But what is his plan as the president is making this address? The former president, I should say.
Yeah, Tom, originally J.D. Vance was set to campaign in North Carolina. 2 stops there, part of this really aggressive campaign to tail Kamala Harris as she made stops around the country. That was obviously stopped or postponed because of weather and unsettling travel conditions. So now we're expecting to see J.D. Vance hold off on events for the rest of the week, according to his staff. But he's most likely going to be tuning in to listen to what the former president has to say about the Harris-Walz ticket. And I will also mention, as we're hearing the former president say right now, the plan is to move forward to define this ticket before Kamala Harris and Governor Walz, Tim Walz, have the opportunity to define themselves before a larger audience. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance over the past couple of days have called this the most liberal Democratic ticket in U.S. history. They're now painting Walz as this far-left Democratic governor, even though he was regarded as one of the more moderate Democrats when in Congress. So we're expected to see that moving forward even after this press conference. They're going to go on to paint this choice between the 2 tickets to voters as a choice between them and between this really far-left liberal Democratic ticket.
And Katrina, I want to turn it back over to you. Of course, in the meantime, we will be dipping into the former president once he starts taking questions. That is the point at which we are going to dip in after he finishes his thoughts here. But Katrina, I want to walk us back a little bit, because Biden won a number of states where Trump had won in 2016, mainly Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, what's known as the Blue Wall, and also Arizona in the Sun Belt. What are the thoughts on a Kamala Harris ticket in those states? Because this election really boils down to some of those key swing states. So the central question here is, can she keep this momentum, which she has gotten a boost from over the last few days ever since announcing her VP pick? Can she hold that momentum, and can she convince voters in those key swing states? Are you hearing anything about the campaign's thoughts on those key swing states that Biden won after Trump had won in 2016. Biden took over in 2020. What are their thoughts on that?
From the Harris campaign, you're asking?
That's correct.
I mean, clearly they are making a sweep for these states. That's why she is starting out with Governor Tim Walz, doing these rallies in each of them. They are absolutely trying to bolster their voter base, and I really think that she sees Tim Walz as a way to round out her ticket. He is someone who comes from a rural, working class area in Nebraska, from a small town, and who can really appeal to this broader voter base, because people have often characterized her as this West Coast liberal, and he really brings this Midwestern counterbalance to her ticket. He is this former teacher, former football coach. He was in the National Guard, and I think that she sees him as someone who can appeal to a wider swath of voters that maybe potentially might have voted Republican in this election otherwise.
And Katrina, obviously, you're following the Trump camp closely as well. What are they doing to really sway voters in those key states? Are you hearing anything from their side?
I mean, the Trump campaign is, of course, targeting those voters as well. I think that's why we see J.D. Vance on the trail, and he's trying to, intimately appeal to people in these communities. While Walz and Harris were having a massive rally in Wisconsin yesterday, he went to a factory and really tried to talk directly to these employees to get his message out in the local media. So they, of course, too, are targeting these states.
Torian, what are you hearing and seeing on the ground where you are, and having followed both campaigns to various degrees, when it comes to this potential honeymoon phase that the Harris Walz ticket may be finding themselves in right now? Do they have the sustained ability to carry this through to Election Day?
Well, Tom, that's certainly something the Harris campaign is watching closely. But just from following J.D. Vance, I know that the Trump campaign believes that this is their essentially flash in the pan moment. This is, according to them, this shiny new toy that Democrats can, really use to galvanize the base. And I will say it has been effective. Kamala Harris brought in a massive haul just within a week of announcing that she would be stepping up as a presumptive Democratic presidential nominee for the party. Within, I think, 24 hours of announcing Walz as her running mate, she raised tens of millions of dollars. This is momentum that the Trump campaign, and we're seeing evident in this press conference today, is looking to undercut, which is, again, why they're out trying to define this ticket before Harris, before Walz get the opportunity to do it and sustain that momentum moving forward.
Yeah, Torian, what are we hearing, if anything, from the latest polling, which shows a very tight race as we stand, just a couple, a little bit more than 2 months out from Election Day?
Well, especially in battleground states like Wisconsin, Marquette University put out a poll not too long ago saying that Kamala Harris is starting to give an edge, at least to the Democratic Party when it comes to the top of the ticket. This is still a tight, close race. And this race, as we're considering at CBS, is still a toss-up. But in states like Wisconsin, where we saw President Biden, when he was at the top of the ticket, struggle to maintain his hope that he had in 2020, this is a game changer potentially for Democrats and their prospects moving forward. One other thing here that I was paying attention to in this Marquette Law School polling, is the enthusiasm gap is also starting to close. Democrats are starting to match Republican enthusiasm when it comes to their presidential candidates. That is something that I know for a fact that the Trump campaign is watching, because they've spent months talking about how Democrats are not as engaged, not as organized, not as excited about their ticket as Republicans were. And it was evident in the crowds that Donald Trump was drawing versus Joe Biden. We see from yesterday, for example, 12,000 plus at the two rallies that Kamala Harris held in Wisconsin and Michigan, that is starting to change.
Do you know, Torian, by chance, where that energy is coming from? Is it the same voter base that supported Joe Biden in 2020, or is the Harris-Walz ticket targeting and galvanizing a different demographic of people, given the fact that the ticket looks different now with Harris at the top?
Yeah, movement that we're seeing is engaging folks who might have not been as enthusiastic at the start of this cycle. These are the same voters that are part of that Biden 2020 base. They're not necessarily new voters coming into the fold, which is what I expect to see Kamala Harris look to make as she moves forward. There is this very small voting block of independents who say they've been on the fence, can't support Trump, had some hesitation.
Torian,
about
I'm so
Joe
sorry
Biden
to interrupt you 2 times, but Donald Trump is starting to take questions. The former president speaking as what you're looking at right now. We're going to dip in to see exactly what he has to say.
San Francisco, friend of mine, Bob Tisch, all know the Tisch family. He was in many cities with companies. He said the greatest city in the country is San Francisco. That was about 20 years ago. And he passed away a while ago, and he would be looking down and said, what happened? He thought it was the best city in the country. He had divisions there, lows. And he would be looking down in horror now when he sees she destroyed no cash bail, weak on crime. She's terrible. And yet they weaponized the system against me. They have me. I got so many lawyers. Now they want to delay cases. I won the big case in Florida. I won the big case. Nobody even wrote about it. The big case, the judge was a brilliant judge. And all they do is they play the ref with the judges. But this judge was a fair but brilliant judge. And as you probably heard, the big documents case, I won it. Now, Biden lost it because he didn't have presidential immunity. He didn't have the Presidential Records Act. He lost it. But the special, I call it prosecutor, special counsel, special prosecutor to me, he, appointed by him and appointed by Garland, he said the man's incompetent. He can't stand trial, but he can run for president. But we no longer have to worry about that because we have somebody that, in my opinion, is more incompetent. She couldn't pass her bar exam and lots of other things, and she should not be in a position. Because if she becomes president, our country is going to be a giant fail. It's going to fail. It's going to be a failure the likes of which this world has never seen. Yeah, please. No, how about you? You have to speak louder.
A big part of the strategy for your campaign before Harris became the nominee was appealing to black voters.
Yeah.
That you were really going after. In polls, we really see Harris gaining ground with that group. And I'm wondering how you are going to go after black voters now that she's the nominee and really winning them over.
Well, it changes around a little bit. I'm getting other voters. Perhaps, I was doing very well with black voters, and I still am. I seem to be doing very well with black males. This is according to polls, as you know. It's possible that I won't do as well with black women, but I do seem to be doing very well with other segments, extremely well with Hispanic. Jewish voters way up. White males way up. White males have gone through the roof. White males way up. Now, I don't know. All we're doing is giving you the stats that you have. It could be that I'll be affected somewhat with black females, where we're doing pretty well. And I think ultimately they'll like me better because I'm going to give them security, safety, and jobs. I'm going to give them a good economy. We have a very bad economy right now. We could literally be on the throes of a depression, not recession, a depression. And they can't have that. They can't have that. So I think I'm going to do well with everybody, especially when the facts are right. Yeah, please, in the back. Well, I don't know. I know Josh Shapiro. He's a terrible guy, and he's not very popular with anybody. I think that this election maybe is better than Josh Shapiro would have been. But I think other than Josh Shapiro, I think she had some good choices. But Josh Shapiro is not one of them. He's caused a lot of damage with a lot of people. And I don't think he would have been better. I think he would have been maybe the equivalent, maybe not as good, but they had some people that they were looking at that were good, far superior to her. They actually had a story where they had everybody, including, they had like 10 people that she was looking at and her, and they said she was the worst of all. In other words, she was the worst out of the 10 people and her. I don't know how that's going to work out. We'd like to do 3 debates. We think we should do 3 debates. We think Fox and ABC, and we also have CBS is going to do the vice presidential debate. So CBS will do vice presidential, and I have to tell you, J.D. Vance has really stepped up. He's doing a fantastic job. Say it.
Are you worried at all about the size of Harris's crowds?
Oh, give me a break. Listen, I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday, 2,000 people? If I ever had 2,000 people, you'd say my campaign is finished. It's so dishonest, the press. And here's a great example. I had in Michigan recently 25,000 people, and 25,000 people we just couldn't get them in. We had in Harrisburg 25,000 people, and 20,000 people couldn't get in. We had so many. Nobody ever mentions that. When she gets 1,500 people, and I saw it yesterday on ABC, which they said, oh, the crowd was so big. I have 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the crowd size, and no, they never say the crowd was big. That's why I'm always saying turn around the cameras. I'm so glad you asked that. I think it's so terrible when you say, well, she has 1,500 people, 1,000 people, and they talk about, oh, the enthusiasm. Let me tell you, we have the enthusiasm. The Republican Party, and me as a candidate, but the Republican Party has the enthusiasm because people want to see crime stopped. They want to see a country that's respected. Think of it. If I were president, you wouldn't have Russia and Ukraine, where it never happened, 0 chance. You wouldn't have had October 7th of Israel. You wouldn't have the horrible withdrawal. And I don't mean the withdrawal, because the withdrawal was fine. I was ready to withdraw from Afghanistan, and we were going to do it with dignity and strength. And we were keeping our equipment. We weren't leaving $85 billion worth of equipment behind. And we wouldn't have had 13 great soldiers. I know the families of those soldiers well. We wouldn't have had these soldiers killed. And we wouldn't have had 45 soldiers obliterated. No legs, no arms, the face. None of that would have happened. And you wouldn't have had inflation. You wouldn't have had any inflation, because inflation was caused by their bad energy problems. Now they've gone back to the Trump thing because they need the votes. I don't know if you know, they're drilling now because they had to go back because gasoline was going up to $7, $8, $9 a barrel. So they said, we better do what Trump. But the day after the election, if they won, you're going to have fuel prices go through the roof. Everybody's going to be forced to buy an electric car, which they're not going to do because they don't want that. It's got a great market. It's got a market. It's really a sub-market. People want gasoline-propelled cars. They want hybrids. They want to have everything, and they want electric. But they want everybody to have an electric car. We don't have enough electricity. We couldn't make enough electricity for that. And you know what else? The weight of a car, the weight of a truck. They want all trucks to be electric. Little things that a lot of people don't talk about. The weight of a truck is 2.5 times heavier. You would have to rebuild every bridge in this country if you were going to do this ridiculous policy. So, but on crowd size, in history, for any country, nobody's had crowds like I have, and you know that. And when she gets 1,000 people and everybody starts jumping, you know that if I had 1,000 people would say, that's the end of his campaign. I have hundreds of thousands of people. In South Carolina, I had 88,000 people. In Alabama, I had 68,000 people. Nobody says about crowd size with me. But she has 1,000 people or 1,500 people, and they say, oh, the enthusiasm's back. No. The enthusiasm is with me and the Republican Party because they want to stop crime. They want to stop people from pouring into our country from places unknown and from countries unknown, from countries that nobody ever heard of. That's where the enthusiasm.
Your campaign is targeting Pennsylvania and Georgia.
Yeah.
Get those two, you could seal the deal. That's
I don't know. I don't know if I can or not. I got him elected. Without me, he wouldn't be governor. I got him elected. He was doing terribly. I got him elected. With that being said, I hope we can repair it. But if we don't, the people are still the people, and they're going to vote. We're leading in Georgia by a lot. We're leading in Pennsylvania by a lot. So, but I don't know. Now, in Pennsylvania, I have great relationships. In Georgia, I do too, but unfortunately not with the governor. I've never understood it. When you get somebody elected, they're supposed to like you. He's not exactly, for some reason, and you'll have to ask him about that. Yeah, I'd love to see it get repaired. I think that if we don't win Georgia, Georgia is a big win, is a big state. So I won Alabama by a record. Nobody's ever gotten that many votes. I won South Carolina by a record. You don't win Alabama and South Carolina by records and lose Georgia. It doesn't happen. And the people of Georgia understand that. There was tremendous anxiety and problems in Georgia. A lot of people say, what happened? And we have to, all we want is honest elections. If we have honest elections in Georgia, and we have honest elections in Pennsylvania, we're going to win them by a lot. Well, he actually said it two ways. First, he said it incorrectly, then he corrected himself. Do you agree with that, right? You know, if you watch him, he said it two ways. No. I mean, he said it two ways because he doesn't really know what he's saying. Why didn't he bring it up at the debate? You know, he had a chance for 90 minutes to bring it up at the debate. He could have talked about that at the debate, and he didn't do it. Everyone said, oh, he said this and he said that. He's just, you know, they give him something to read off. He read it very badly because he actually said it the opposite. Then he had to go back and correct himself. He said the opposite. He should have brought this up at the debate. If he had a problem, of course there'll be a peaceful transfer. And there was last time, and there'll be a peaceful transfer. I just hope we're going to have honest elections. That's all, okay?
You have not had a public campaign event for nearly a week now from Arlington, Montana, which is not a swing state. Some of your allies have expressed concern that you're not taking this race seriously, particularly—
What a stupid question this is. Because I'm leading by a lot and because I'm letting their convention go through, and I am campaigning a lot. I'm doing tremendous amounts of taping here. We have commercials that are at a level I don't think that anybody's ever done before. Plus, in certain cases, I see many of you in the room where I'm speaking to you on phones, I'm speaking to radio, I'm speaking to television. Television's coming over here. Excuse me, what are we doing right now? She's not doing any news conference. You know why she's not doing it? Because she can't do a news conference. She doesn't know how to do a news conference. She's not smart enough to do a news conference. And I'm sorry, we need smart people to lead this country because our country's never been in this danger before, both economically and from an outside perspective. Russia doesn't respect us anymore. China doesn't respect us anymore. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, liked me a lot. He doesn't like this group. We are in great danger. We're in great danger of being in World War III. That could happen. No, after their convention, yeah. And I'm going out, actually, I'm going out to certain places to help certain senators get elected. Not even for me. I'm trying to help when I go out to Wyoming or when I go out to Montana, or I'm going to different places to help people. And I don't have to go there because I'm leading those states, as you know, by 35, 40, 50 points. I'm leading by record numbers. I'm going because I want to help senators and congressmen get elected. Congressmen and women get elected. Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, can you tell us a bit more about your upcoming interview with Elon Musk?
The upcoming what?
Interview with Elon Musk on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Reports now saying that the Chinese Communist Party is trying to use American social media platforms to spread its propaganda. What do you think this is?
Yeah, the Elon Musk. So, yeah, sure. So Elon called me. As you know, he endorsed me full-throated. Great endorsement. I respect Elon a lot. He respects me. And not easy for him to endorse, to be honest with you. You know, it takes courage to endorse people. Many people have courage and many people don't. He does have courage. And Elon endorsed me, and he asked me whether or not I'd do a show on Monday, and I think it's going to be Monday night. And I believe he's the host of the show. So it'll be very interesting. A lot of people are talking about it. I look forward to it. That'll be done on Monday night.
And just a quick question. What do you think social media companies in America should do to combat potentially misinformation spread by the Chinese people?
Well, you have a lot of misinformation spread about China, and you have a lot of misinformation spread about a lot of different places. I think I'm going to get along great with China. President Xi of China and I were very good friends. We met right here, right in that, except we had a beautiful sofa there, as opposed to what we have right now. Right now we have you. But President Xi and I had a very good relationship until COVID. And I held him responsible for COVID. It broke up our relationship. But I think we're going to have a great relationship. And I think it's going to be mutually beneficial. But we cannot have it where China is taking advantage of the United States. And that's what they were doing, as you very well know. Yes, please.
Mr. President, you just said that it was a peaceful transfer of power last time when you left office. You didn't concede. January 6th was a violent attack. How is that a peaceful transfer of power?
What's your question?
My question is, you think that last time it was a peaceful transfer of power when you left office?
No, I think the people that, if you look at January 6th, which a lot of people aren't talking about very much, I think those people were treated very harshly. When you compare them to other things that took place in this country where a lot of people were killed, nobody was killed on January 6th. But I think that the people of January 6th were treated very unfairly. And they were there to complain, not through me, they were there to complain about an election. And, you know, it's very interesting. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I said peacefully and patriotically, which nobody wants to say, but I said peacefully and patriotically. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken to, and you've seen, Maggie, I was at the mall, I was at the Washington Monument, I was at the whole thing. I had crowds, I don't know who's ever had a bigger crowd than I have, but I had it many times. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken before was that day, and I'll tell you, it's very hard to find a picture of that crowd. You see the picture of a small number of people relatively going to the Capitol, but you never see the picture of the crowd. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken, I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. They said I had 25,000, and he had 1 million people, and I'm okay with it because I liked Dr. Martin Luther King. Yeah, please.
Democrats to replace President Biden with Vice President Harris as their candidate. Can you explain your constitutional analysis? Which part of the Constitution?
Yeah, sure. We have a Constitution. It's a very important document, and we live by it. She has no votes, and I'm very happy to run against her. I'm not complaining from that standpoint. And I hate to be defending him, but he did not want to leave. He wanted to see if he could win. They said, you're not going to win after the debate. They said, you're not going to win, you can't win, you're out. And at first they said it nicely, and he wasn't leaving. And then you know it better than anybody. Wait a minute. So when you think about it, they said at first they were going to go out to another vote. They were going to go through a primary system, a quick primary system, which it would have to be. And then it all disappeared, and they just picked a person that was the first out. She was the first loser, okay? So we call her the first loser. She was the first loser when, during the primary system. During the Democrat primary system, she was the first one to quit, and she quit. She had no votes, no support, and she was a bad debater, by the way, very bad debater. And that's not the thing I'm looking forward to, but she was a bad debater. She did, obviously, a bad job. She never made it to Iowa. Then for some reason, and I know he regrets it, you do too, he picked her, and she turned on him too. She was working with the people that wanted him out. But the fact that you can get no votes, lose in the primary system, in other words, you had 14 or 15 people, she was the first one out, and that you can then be picked to run for president, it seems to me actually unconstitutional. Perhaps it's not. Please. So I've run against Hillary, and I've run against various other people. I would say that in terms of intelligence, Hillary was far superior. I would say that. Hillary was smart. She was her own worst enemy in many ways, but she was smart, very smart. Okay? If you ask me to compare them, please.
You staked out the position on voting that was probably more popular with general election voters than many of your Republican primary opponents did, even in states. Given that that's your position, how do you plan to vote in Florida's abortion ballot referendum this fall?
Would you repeat that question, please? Do you have to speak up?
Yes, sir. I said
It's a hard room because it's very big, if you know. So this is worth $18 million. Oh, I see.
that was probably more popular with general election voters than many of your Republican rivals in the primary. You said leaders in states. Given that Florida is a state voting on that this fall,
Yeah.
how do you plan to vote? Do you plan to
So I think the abortion issue has been very much tempered down, and I've answered, I think, very well in the debate, and it seems to be much less of an issue, especially for those where they have the exceptions, as you know. And I think it's when I look for 52 years, they wanted to bring abortion back to the states. They wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade, and that's Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and everybody. Liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back in the states, and I did that. Now the states are voting. And frankly, some of the votes are much more, if you could say, liberal than you would think. Ohio turned out to be, they had a big vote, and it turned out to be a much more liberal standing than people would have thought. Kansas, the same thing. And then you have Texas, and you have other places where it may be different. But the issue has been brought back to the states now. And like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly. I think that that's a very important thing. I think when you have to follow your heart. But when you don't believe in the exceptions, I think it's much tougher. It's a much tougher issue. But about 82% of Republicans do believe in exceptions. I think and a lot of them are changing their mind and coming even further. I think that abortion has become much less of an issue. It's a very small, I think it's actually going to be a very small issue. What I've done is I've done what every Democrat and every Republican wanted to have done, and we brought that issue back to the states. And now the states are voting on it. And frankly, some of the votes are a lot different than people would have thought. But it's the vote of the people is taking care of it. And, you know, when you think about the Democrats are really the radical ones in this because they're allowed to do abortion on the 8th and 9th month and even after birth. If you look at your new governor from Minnesota, he's like the governor previous, the former governor. I don't want to get him mixed up because Glenn is doing a good job and he's leading our whole campaign in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. But previous to Glenn, the governor, he said, the baby will be born, we will put the baby aside, and we will decide with the mother what we're going to do. In other words, whether or not we're going to kill the baby. The Minnesota gentleman, this guy agrees with that. He is the most liberal. Look, between her and him, there's never been anything like this. There's never been a combination. So I'll use the word progressive. You know, they want to go progressive. They don't like the word liberal. I like liberal better. I think it's more appropriate because nobody knows what progressive means. But they now like to use the word progressive. But there's certainly never been anybody so liberal like these two, or even close. I think the abortion issue has been taken down many notches. I don't think it's a big factor anymore, really. And when people hear what I said in the debate, and I think I said it very well during the debate, we brought it back to the states. Everybody wanted it in the states. And very importantly, and you think about this, assuming you have exceptions. If you don't have exceptions, it's a more difficult thing. At the same time, there are people that strongly feel that way, and you have to follow your heart, and you should follow your heart. But that issue is very much subdued. Yeah, thank you.
I want to ask you about the assassination attempt.
About who?
About the assassination attempt.
Yes.
Did the fact that somebody used an AR-15 gun at all change your impression of people's access to that weapon?
No, I didn't. Look, if you take away guns, she wants to take away everyone's gun. If you take away guns, you can't do it because people need the guns for protection. Now, entertainment, they want it, hunting, they want, different things. But They need weapons for protection in this country. People live out in the woods, and they're not going to have a gun. If you look at some countries, I don't want to get them in trouble, but some countries have actually gone the opposite way. They had very strong gun laws, and now they have gone the opposite way, where they allowed people to have guns, where in one case they encouraged people to go out and get guns, and crime is down 29%. And remember this, what is the toughest gun law in the United States? Chicago. On July 4th, 117 people were shot and 17 died. The toughest gun laws in the United States are in the city of Chicago. You know that. They had 117 people shot. Afghanistan does not have that. Afghanistan, by the way, was the lowest point in the history of our country, in my opinion. That was the worst embarrassment to the history of this country, and I say Putin would not have gone into Ukraine if that didn't happen. When he saw the incompetence of Milley and all these guys that are incompetent, when he saw that happen, when they took out the soldiers first, they took out the soldiers first. You know, if you go back and check your records, for 18 months, I had a talk with Abdul. Abdul was the leader of the Taliban, still is. But I had a strong talk with him. For 18 months, not one American soldier was shot at or killed, but not even shot at. 18 months, and then we had the disaster of the lift, where people were falling off airplanes from 3 times the height of the World Trade Center. I mean, terrible. But now our country has to be respected again. Please. Go ahead, please.
There was some reporting, I believe, in the New York Times that Kamala Harris said she might be open to the idea of a weapons embargo against Israel. I wonder if you could comment on that.
I'd be against that. That Kamala is in favor of not giving Israel weapons? Yeah. That's what I hear. Look, she's been very, very bad to Israel, and she's been very bad to Jewish people. And I say it, if anybody I know is Jewish and they would vote for Kamala over me, they should have their head examined. If you think about it, I gave them Golan Heights. I gave them the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. I even built the embassy. I gave them no Iran deal. The problem is they didn't do anything with it. Iran was broke. We could have made a deal so easily. I would have had a deal done within 1 week after the election with Iran. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We would have gotten along with Iran. I was looking forward to it. I was fine with Iran. You know, we hit them a couple of times pretty hard, but we would have been fine with Iran. But I terminated that deal. I got them the Abraham Accords. Everyone said that's impossible. I got them the Abraham Accords. She's been very, very bad to Israel, and she's been very bad and disrespectful to Jewish people. And any Jewish person that votes for Kamala and her friend, her new friend, who I don't know if she knew him before, but I don't think he's too good. But anybody that votes for them, if you're Jewish or if you love Israel, you have to have your head examined. Go ahead, please. They have. The FBI came to see me about the shooter. I think they've done a very good job. And I think they did a very good job with respect to this other lunatic that they have in custody. Please.
There's been some discussion around Vice President Harris's relationship with Willie Brown,
Yeah.
former mayor of San Francisco, and how that might have intersected with her career trajectory. So I'm just wondering if you followed that discussion at all and had any thoughts.
Well, I know Willie Brown very well. In fact, I went down in a helicopter with him. We thought maybe this is the end. We were in a helicopter going to a certain location together, and there was an emergency landing. This was not a pleasant landing, and Willie was, he was a little concerned. So I know him pretty well. I mean, I haven't seen him in years. But he told me terrible things about her. But this is what you're telling me anyway, I guess. But he had a big part in what happened with Kamala. But he I don't know, maybe he's changed his tune, but he was not a fan of hers very much at that point.
Do you believe Vice President Harris would certify your election victory if you win?
Yeah, I do. Go ahead.
How are you planning to vote on Florida's abortion referendum?
On what?
How are you planning to vote on Florida's abortion referendum?
Well, I'm going to announce that. I'm going to actually have a press conference on that at some point in the near future, so I don't want to tell you now. But Florida does have a vote coming up on that, and I think probably the vote will go in a little more liberal way than people thought. But I'll be announcing that at the appropriate time. Please.
Mr. President, your tax cuts from your administration will be coming up, fairly soon and potentially expiring. I wanted to ask you specifically about the tax code favoring parents versus people who don't have children. There are a number of tax breaks.
Yeah. Oh, we gave tremendous for child care and all of that. No, our tax cuts, which are the biggest in history, our tax cuts are coming due, as you know, very soon. And if the Democrats don't renew them or make it impossible to renew because it's pretty close in terms of vote, if they don't renew them, it's the equivalent of having a 4 times tax increase from what you have right now, and it'll destroy the economy. I think they're under tremendous pressure to do it. I've never seen, all my life I grow up and I watch politics, and I used to be on the other side of politics first, and then I run for office. But in all the years of studying politics, I've never seen people get elected by saying, we're going to give you a tax increase. These guys get up. Think of it. We're going to give you no security. We're going to give you a weak military. We're going to give you no walls, no borders, no anything. All these things they're doing. I mean, the transgender became such a big thing. But they do all of these things, but they always say, we're going to give you a tax increase. I never heard anybody campaign on a tax increase. A politician has always said, I will cut taxes. I'll give you one example, Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. I am going to leave Social Security. I'm not raising the years. I'm not raising the age. I will be saving Social Security, and I'm going to work it out that there's no tax on Social Security for seniors. I'm also doing no tax on tips, no tax on tips. So waiters, waitresses, caddies, people that drive cars, people that get tips who have been harassed by this government, we're going to have no tax on tips. That's a big thing. Yeah, oh, absolutely, sure. Because other people have done far bigger things than Steve Bannon, sure. It's politically motivated. I think it's a horrible thing they did. Look, they've weaponized government against me. Look at the Florida case. It was a totally weaponized case. All of these cases, by the way, the New York cases are totally controlled out of the Department of Justice. They sent their top person to the various places. They went to the AG's office, got that one going. Then he went to the DA's office, got that one going, ran through it. No, this is all politics, and it's a disgrace. Never happened in this country. It's very common that it happens, but not in our country. It happens in banana republics and third world countries, and that's what we're becoming. We have no borders. We have bad voting regulations. Anytime you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have problems. France learned that lesson. France had all mail-in voting, and they went back to paper ballots, voter identification, voter ID. They went back to a normal system, one-day voting. They don't want to be around, voting for 64 days. And look, the election, I keep talking about November 5th, but the election really starts on September 6th. That's when it starts because it's early voting. We should have one-day voting. We should have paper ballots, we should have voter ID, and we should have proof of citizenship. Please. No, the gentleman in the back.
Mr. President, do you support continuation tax credit for EVs?
For who?
For electric vehicles, do you support continuation?
You're going to have to talk louder, sir.
Do you support continuation of tax credits for EVs? And secondly, what sort of political or policy advice does Elon Musk give you?
Elon is a very different kind of a guy. He's a very big believer in the country, but he's very worried about the country. He's very worried about the country. And I don't know if it's good for him politically to have supported me, although I think we have a vast majority of this country does support me. But Elon, more than almost anybody I know, I mean, he loves this country. He loves the concept of the country. But like me, he says this country is in big trouble. It's in tremendous danger. Okay, please.
Polls suggest overwhelmingly that Americans trust you more than Kamala Harris to fix the U.S. economy.
I like this guy. I like him.
What message do you have to Americans, sir, who are struggling to pay for everyday
Yeah.
groceries, rent?
The polls have suggested. There are some polls that say we're going to win in a landslide. People are voting with their stomachs, meaning They're going to the grocery store. They're paying 50, 60, 70% more for food than they did just a couple of years ago. Look at what's happened to energy. Look at what's happened not only to their cars, where gasoline's gone from $1.87, and we had moments when it was below that, but it's gone from $1.87 to $5, $6, and $7. And they take the strategic national reserves and they take it out, even though it's peanuts compared, it doesn't last long. But they're virtually empty now. We've never had it this low. And he's using that to keep the gasoline prices as low as possible. He's sucked all of the oil out, essentially the gasoline, to keep the price down a little bit, and it's had very little impact. But you know what? We have no strategic national reserves now. He's emptied it. It's almost empty. It's never been this low. And I had it at a good level, and I would have had it more if the Democrats would have approved the deal. You know, I had a deal to buy it at $22 a barrel, and now it's going to be close to 100 pretty soon, my opinion. And the Democrats didn't want to do that, but we bought a lot anyway. And we had it pretty good. And what they've done to the national reserves, the strategic national reserves, is, as you know very well, because you cover it, but what they've done is incredible. They've just, for the sake of getting some votes, for the sake of having gasoline, you know, that's meant for wars. It's meant for, like, tragedy. It's not meant to keep a gasoline price down so that somebody can vote for Biden, or in this case, Kamala, who, by the way, is worse than Biden. And she's actually not as smart, okay? She's actually not as smart. That's hard to believe, isn't it? Yeah, please. Okay.
There are other things the federal government could do, not just a ban. Would you direct your FDA, for example, to revoke access to mifepristone? That's one of the things.
Sure, you could do things that would supplement, absolutely. And those things are pretty open and humane. But you have to be able to have a vote, and all I want to do is give everybody a vote. And the votes are taking place right now as we speak. Yeah, but it's there are many things on a humane basis that you can do outside of that, but you also have to give a vote, and the people are going to have to decide. Okay, yes, please. You. On what? No, I think she's actually not as smart as he is. I don't think he's very smart either, by the way. I'm not a big fan of his brain. But I think that she's actually not as smart as he is.
So what do you attribute her rising in the polls as becoming a more competitive race since she's taken over?
Well, she's a woman. She represents certain groups of people. But I will say this. When people find out about her, I think she'll be much less. And I see it right now. I see her going way down in the polls now. Now that people are finding out that she destroyed San Francisco, she destroyed the state of California along with Governor Gavin Newsom. He's been a terrible governor, terrible. But they did it together. And she was early. I mean, she was the first of the prosecutors, really. You know, now you see Philadelphia, you see Los Angeles, you see New York, you see various people that are very bad. But she was the first of the bad prosecutors. She was early. Who? Would you repeat that, please? No, you. Would you repeat her, what she said? You have to speak up. This room is very louder. Do you hear her? A daily press briefing? Why would I do that? I would give you all the press briefings you want. Look what I'm doing here. But why would I do a daily press? You'd get tired of me very fast. No, but I will give you total access, and you'll have a lot of press briefings, and you'll have from me. Now, are you talking about from me or from a press secretary? Well, yeah, probably they'll do something. If it's not daily, it's going to be a lot. You'll have more than you want. Yeah, please. I don't think it's appropriate for me to talk about it. I think it's a tragic story. You want to know the truth. And I felt that with Hillary Clinton, too. You know, with Hillary Clinton, I could have done things to her that would have made your head spin. I thought it was a very bad thing. Take the wife of a president of the United States and put her in jail. And then I see the way they treat me. That's the way it goes. But I was very protective of her. Nobody would understand that, but I was. I think my people understand it. They used to say, lock her up, and I'd say, just relax, please. We won the election. I think it would be I think it would have been horrible for our country and we had her between the hammering of all of the files. And don't forget, she got a subpoena from the United States Congress. And then, after getting the subpoena, she destroyed everything that she was supposed to get. I thought it was so bad to take her and put her in jail, the wife of a president of the United States, and then when it's my turn, nobody thinks that way. I thought it was a very terrible thing. And she did a lot of very bad things. I'll tell you what, she was pretty evil. But in terms of the country and in terms of unifying the country, bringing it back, to have taken her and to have put her in jail, and I think you know the things as well as I do. There were some pretty bad acts that she did. I think it would have been very bad for our country. And a lot of my people, a lot of the MAGA, as they call them, but the base. And I think the base is 75% of the country, far beyond the Republican Party, because we're a party of common sense, and I'm a person of common sense. I want to have low taxes. I want to have strong borders. I want to have a strong military so that China and Russia, look, they've allowed China and Russia to do the impossible combined. They're natural enemies. They always have been, because China needs more land and Russia has it. They've always been natural enemies, and because of Obama, it started with him, and then Biden, because he didn't know what the hell he was doing, they've now become one force. And then now they're adding Iran to it, and they're adding North Korea to it. Pretty powerful force. This is something that is unthinkable that they allowed to happen.
Just to put a button on this, you're saying that you're not going to change your campaign strategy, you're going to keep going with the issues. Well, what if this so-called honeymoon period doesn't end?
Oh, it's going to end. The honeymoon period's going to end. Look, she's got a little period. She's got a convention coming up. It's about policy. It's not about her. I think she's incompetent because I've watched her. She destroyed California. She destroyed San Francisco. Everything she's touched has turned to bad things. I'm not going to use foul language, but everything she's touched has turned bad. She's incompetent. The reason she's not doing what I do and she's not doing what she should be doing, she won't even do interviews with friendly people because she can't do better than Biden. Now, he had a reason for not doing well, and he was never, 25 years ago, the sharpest or brightest bulb in the ceiling. That I can tell you, okay? He wasn't. But he could do interviews at least. Not lately, he couldn't, perhaps. But she should be doing interviews. She doesn't want to do interviews. And the reason she doesn't is, number one, her policies are so bad. Just to answer your question, I think that it's not going to change because it's really ultimately not about her as much as about her policies. She wants open borders. She wants to defund the police. She wants to defund the police. She wants to take away your guns. Anybody that thinks they're not going to come after your guns, you know, when I was president, I totally protected the guns. And I think it's very important. And I know I take some heat sometimes for it, but you have to have safety. You have to have, when the bad guy walks in with a gun, you got to have some way of protecting yourself. And boy, that would be, you would see crime go up at levels that you've never seen. When people say on this side of the house, this house has guns, we will use the guns, they say, let's pass. We'll go someplace else. You have to have them. And for 4 years, and you know, as you know, the NRA endorsed me very powerfully every time I ran, every time. My sons are members, and I guess indirectly I'm a member too. But they gave me the strongest of endorsements, and that's against very strong competition. People that felt the same way. No, you have to have that right. Our Second Amendment is a very important right, and it has to be protected. Okay, how about you? Go ahead. Yeah. So there are some of the most brilliant people on Wall Street that are saying that if President Trump doesn't win, you're going to have a depression. I happen to agree. I think that's true. Because I know how bad these people are. You know, they like to say that they did this and that. You saw the $7 trillion that they said it was me for $7 trillion. It wasn't me. It was them. They said that I had inflation. They took over 9% inflation. No, I had 1% inflation. I had actually no inflation because if you look at the categories, we had just about no inflation. But I had a very minor, I actually had a positive inflation. It was a perfect number because you don't want zero. I mean, I'm not going to give you a whole course on economics, but you don't want zero. 1%, 1.4% is great. You want a little bit because you don't want to have deflation. Deflation is, in many ways, even worse. I had a perfect number right around the 1% number. It was perfect. And to show you, it stayed there for 2 years. And then he did all of the different borrowings that he did. And then he did so many things wrong. Every time he would do it, I'd say, big mistake. And don't forget, they sell hats and they sell stories. Trump was right about everything. I've been right about a lot. Yes, Maggie. Well, we had a commission like other people do, and it's always complicated and it's always controversial. And we had commissions that, and I think of respected people, you know many of the people on the commission, and they would recommend to me certain pardons for certain people. Some people were treated very harshly. A fantastic woman, as you know, she served 24 years for being on a phone call having to do with drugs. You know who I'm talking about. She was great. And she had another 24 years to go. And it was largely about marijuana, which in many cases is now legalized, okay? But we had many very highly regarded people on a commission, and they'd recommend, and they'd put a reason why. Some people were, served time, but they served a lot of time for something that today people wouldn't even serve time by. Well, for the most part, I think they did. I mean, they did. They go through. They went through. I had a commission. It was a very important commission to me, and highly respected people. And frankly, they came up with some decisions that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, but I did.
All right, if you're just joining us now, I'm Tom Hansen, and you've been listening to former President Trump speaking from Mar-a-Lago. Among today's talking points, Trump says that he would like to do 3 presidential debates. He took issue with Vice President Harris not doing interviews since she became the Democratic nominee for president. The former president insisted that, of course, there will be a peaceful transfer of power after this coming election, contradicting what President Biden feared in his interview with our Robert Costa that will air on CBS News Sunday. Trump also says he believes abortion should be left up to the states and will be a small issue in the upcoming election. Really, in this meandering Q&A that the former president gave, he painted sort of a dark world, a dark, ominous world if the Harris camp ends up winning the presidency. Conversely, the Harris camp has also painted a dark and ominous world if the former president wins this upcoming election. CBS News campaign reporter Torian Small joins us now by phone from Cincinnati, Ohio. So, Torian, what are the key takeaways from today's remarks? And do you expect to hear more of this from the former president as we close in on November? We know that this is sort of going to be a foreshadow for probably what we're going to see in the upcoming debates.
Well, some notable moments there. We saw the former president agree to finally debate Kamala Harris. This is after weeks of it being undecided whether or not the Trump campaign will step up. We've even seen his running mate, J.D. Vance, say that they won't commit to anything until the ticket is finalized, presumably through the DNC convention. But Trump today said that he is willing to debate Kamala Harris at 3 dates that were set previously. We also heard him look to paint Kamala Harris as this far-left radical Democrat. He tethered a lot of what he called failures under the Biden administration to her, calling it the Harris administration, and is looking to make that case to voters, that if they don't like what they've seen over the past 4 years, in his mind, it is because of Kamala Harris. But this was a press conference that was at times scattered. He took shots not just at the vice president, but also painted her running mate, Governor Walz of Minnesota, as this far left radical liberal, made some falsehoods about his stances on abortion, and then he also took aim at other political rivals like former President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. This was, though, pretty typical of a Trump campaign stump. We've seen him deviate away from the teleprompter at his rallies to also take these types of attacks. So in a setting like this where he was open to questions, it was clear that his mission was to direct some of those questions or inquiries from the press to talking points that he had, which was the mission here was to paint Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as this radical Democratic ticket.
You know, one of the things that we saw, and forgive me, I want to bring in CBS campaign reporter Aaron Navarro. He's been following the Harris campaign. So, Aaron, you know, one of the interesting things that we saw, Trump really attempting to tie VP Kamala Harris to President Biden. It's interesting to note that because Kamala has jumped into the spotlight as a candidate who's trying to differentiate herself from President Biden. As we all know, he was facing sort of an enthusiasm deficit heading into this election. So what response, if any, are you hearing from the Harris team about Trump's remarks today?
Well, the Harris team, like they always do whenever Trump is speaking or advances, they've been clipping certain bits from his speeches and putting it out on their Kamala HQ, their rapid response account. They've highlighted, as Torian mentioned, his comments about abortion, but highlighting how Trump claimed responsibility and said many people wanted Roe v. Wade to be overturned. They are highlighting how Trump said that Jewish Americans who do not vote for him should, quote, have their head examined. So taking some of the more bombastic comments and really highlighting those on their X account. Now, when it comes to the debate, that's kind of the outlying question from all of this. We have asks out to the Harris campaign. Before, when Trump has said that he should debate Biden more, that Biden should accept more debates, the Biden campaign had responded by saying, these are the dates we agreed to, don't back out of them. We'll see, now that ABC seems to be confirmed, how the Harris campaign handles these proposed dates for NBC and Fox from former President Trump.
And Aaron, you know, as we look at the former president speaking still right now and taking questions, one of the questions that I have is the timing of all this. You know, after all of this momentum and enthusiasm for the Harris-Walz ticket, kind of a renewal or revival of that campaign after the former president or after President Biden stepped down, do you think that that plays a role in former President Trump having this news conference? What's the strategy behind the former president with his remarks now?
Yeah, it's the timing to try and break into the news cycle. And you could hear one of his most animated answers was about crowd size, as there's been a lot of attention paid to the tens of thousands that are at the Harris rallies this week. Trump has said in this press conference today that he had a larger crowd size than Martin Luther King Jr. at some of his events. Again, trying to downplay the enthusiasm and excitement around Vice President Harris, as well as downplay where they are in the polls. He often says that he is way up in the polls, something that's not that new for him to say. But if you look at our CBS News polling, it shows a margin of error race in every battleground state, and Vice President Harris registering at a higher clip with Democrats and moderate voters than President Biden was.
I think this was one of the first times that we really saw the former president have an opportunity to take a number of swipes and hurl insults at this new ticket on the Democratic side. You know, he called VP Harris a loser at one point, questioning her competence. And like I said earlier, this is really foreshadowing what we probably are going to see on the debate stage at some point. So, Torian, I want to turn it back over to you. Is the Trump campaign concerned about the momentum the Harris-Walz ticket has received in recent days?
Well, what's interesting ahead of this press conference, you know, several Trump officials said that, according to their polling, not much has changed in this race since Kamala has stepped in. They kind of looked at this or the momentum as a flash in the pan, but it's clear, as Aaron pointed out, the attention that Trump is trying to draw to the size of his crowds compared to Harris, it's clear that they are at least taking note of it and could see this as a potential problem moving forward. Again, this is, comes weeks after Harris' campaign announced that they raised a record number of money in such a short amount of time, over $300 million since Harris announced that she was going to be at the top of the ticket. Within 24 hours of announcing Governor Tim Walz as her running mate, they raised around $30 million. So this is a lot of time, a lot of money going that could be evidence of the enthusiasm that Democrats are starting to see.
You know, one other thing, as we look at the potential VP, Governor Walz, a former teacher, a veteran, blue collar, has codified abortion rights and reproductive health care in his state. So, Torian, staying with you, how has the addition of Governor Walz to the Democratic ticket changed the Trump campaign's approach, if at all, at this point?
What we've seen, especially from J.D. Vance, and I've been following him this past week on the trail, we've seen him come out as the pit bull of the Trump campaign to not just challenge Governor Walz's record, call him or paint him as this, liberal Democrat in Minnesota, but also to take issue, point out some what he calls discrepancies in his record in the military. He, over this past couple of days have said he was offended by a resurfaced audio of Governor Walz saying that, the weapons he carried in war shouldn't be on the streets. This, as J.D. Vance explained, is insulting considering that Walz never saw combat. To that point, I should also point out that J.D. Vance acknowledged that he also has not been in combat. But they're looking to define him not just as this radical liberal, but also to show Democratic voters, but voters at large, that he, in their mind, is not being honest or truthful about his record.
And Aaron, I want to turn it back over to you. Both Trump and Vance have discussed debating Vice President Harris. What we're seeing now and what we're seeing on the campaign trail with Harris and Walz, it really is going to come to a head when these debates happen. What do we know about the likelihood of this happening? And do we know if and when we could see the two nominees on the debate stage?
So we have confirmation from at least ABC, who said that Vice President Harris and former President Trump have both confirmed they will attend their debate on September 10th on ABC. So that one, which was kind of always in the books, even when President Biden was still the candidate, seems to be solidified and will be happening. Now, when it comes to the Fox and NBC debates, those are still up in the air in terms of how the Harris campaign will respond. In the past, when this happened, when Biden was still the nominee, they said that and indicated that they wouldn't necessarily be doing more debates just because Trump wanted them. Obviously, a different case now with Harris as the nominee, such a truncated campaign election cycle, race until November. We'll see if and how they respond.
Torian Small and Aaron Navarro, thank you for your insight and giving us some extra content. We're going to take context, I should say. We're going to take a short break. Coming up next, we'll have the latest on the damage caused by Tropical Storm Debbie. Stay with us.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.